Next up, these lights should come back on in the next minute, so don't despair. Next up, we have Anoop Nannra, who's the head of blockchain at CISCO. Although, if you're Korean, Anoop, where are you? He's not Korean. But if you were Korean, you might know him better as the face of CISCO Coin, which ripped off his identity and raised $50 million, which, I don't know, did you get any of that money?
I got zero.
Zero, okay.
But what I finally recognize now is when it comes time for salary negotiation, I now know what I'm worth. All right, so for my boss, I can be very clear and upfront and say, hey, someone's willing to pay me $50 million.
I think it's great. I think it's great as well that this face can raise $50 million. Just if anyone takes pictures today,
I'm not so sure about
worth
that.
A lot. Anyway, Anoop Nannra, head of blockchain at CISCO.
Thanks a lot. Well, thanks a lot, folks. I think it's definitely an honor to be speaking here at the Crypto Valley Association conference. When Oliver, asked me to speak, I said, come to Zug in the summer, mountains, valley, fantastic. Of course I'm going to come. And so one of the things that we've been looking at in the blockchain space at Cisco is what are the opportunities? What are the challenges? What are the friction points? As you can imagine, Cisco being a fairly large company that, whose customers operate over 70% of the world's internet. Some would say that, and the comment has been made that Cisco actually already operates all of the world's blockchain networks. We're just not making any money on it, right? But that's something that, over the next couple of quarters, we'll try and fix and try and resolve some of that. But definitely, this is a space that is very exciting, very strategic for the company. Anytime anyone ever talks about blockchain, they always talk about it in the context of a network. And so, who better to do that than one of the most trusted brands in actually delivering internet and networking technologies. So what I'll talk about today is again, use cases, some friction points, some of the opportunities that we're seeing in this space, as well as how we're helping the community actually evolve and advance. So we've seen explosive growth in this space over the last 18 to 24 months. We've seen amazing innovation. The amount of innovation that is happening at every layer within the stack is astounding. The pace of innovation is astounding. The level of accessibility to the technology is greatly improved from even just 18 months ago. So we're seeing innovation happening at the communications layer, at the consensus layer, at smart contracts, the distributed applications that are being conceived of. We're seeing rapid progress, rapid innovation across the entire sector. Now, what's really interesting is that while we're seeing a lot of very positive innovation, we're also seeing, the criminal element being just as innovative, just as creative. And I would say in some cases, not being more technically savvy, but actually being smarter, right? They're not working harder, they're working smarter. So here is an example of malware that is actually being delivered. This is a 2-year investigation that we were a part of, working with a number of governments around the world, of actually identifying phishing, right, within the crypto community. We identified that there were actually a number of ad platforms that are actually delivering phishing and malware, right? And it's not because of these platforms were being compromised or there was some kind of notorious or nefarious hack, but rather there's a lack of application of good standards-based security best practices that are being applied or not being applied. And so for folks who have basically taken $50 million or maybe $60 million out of the crypto community over the last 18 months, this is a trend that we're going to see increasingly more often. And so part of our challenge is how do we actually apply complete end-to-end security positioning and posturing around blockchain technology and the solutions that we're putting in place. So We've also seen some really interesting scratch your head kind of moments, right? Product X is now blockchain, right? And you go from a penny stock, you increase your stock price significantly by simply adding blockchain to your portfolio or to your investment page. Is this a trend? I hope not, because I think there is some real value that can be built into this space and into this industry. But this is definitely a moment in time where there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of anticipation, right, around what the technology can actually deliver and what it can actually make happen. So, CryptoKitties. Quick show of hands, who's actually got a CryptoKitty? Come on, be honest. I mean, I know there are probably more closet CryptoKitty owners in this audience. Okay, so I would say maybe a dozen, right? But let's not CryptoKitties, right? CryptoKitties is I applaud the project, I applaud the application, because what it did is it made available blockchain technology in a very consumer-friendly way, right? And that's one of the challenges that still exists in blockchain. Blockchain is still hard, it's still complex, there's still a steep learning curve. But an application like CryptoKitties, in a mobile-centric environment, allowed us to, for the first time, I believe, to actually introduce blockchain technology to a much broader ecosystem, a much broader community. So, while you like or dislike CryptoKitties, what it actually did, I think, is it actually helped our community significantly. And so this is something that, maybe we'll see more of, right? Maybe we'll see crypto doggies, but this is something that I think we're gonna have to keep an eye on, and how do we take lessons learned from events like this and actually pull them into our own product and portfolio strategies. And of course, enterprises are now starting to get really excited about blockchain technology, right? There has been a mountain of excitement in the public and cryptocurrency side, but as we're moving and as we're kind of growing into the enterprise side, enterprises are starting to look at this as, hey, there's something here, right? And it's more than just efficiency and risk reduction and cost reduction. There are genuinely new monetization opportunities that are being created. I think we're still at the early days of this space, and so it's going to be another 12 to 18, maybe 24 months before we start seeing some significant monetization models emerge out of this space. But if you look at just counterfeit, right? I mean, $270 billion in just pharma counterfeit globally, right? That's just one sector, right? In the US, it's $70 billion just for counterfeit pharma. And so if you have the ability using technology like blockchain to actually start reclaiming some of that capital, some of that money, you're actually in a position to drive value, and you're actually in a position to potentially create new monetization models for yourselves. So over the last couple of years, right, and Cisco's been looking at the blockchain space for about 3.5, 4 years now, we've seen a remarkable evolution in use cases, right? We started off in financial services, capital markets, and just like everyone else, that's where we started our investigations. And then we started realizing that there's actually an opportunity to create entirely net new markets using this technology. And in recent times, we're starting to see how blockchain technology can actually integrate and interact with the real world, right? And so, this is where we're starting to see the connection between blockchain and IoT, right? How do you get real-time telemetry off of systems, off of networks, off of ecosystems and environments? Take noteworthy events, capture them in a secure and immutable way, and actually create a net new market for yourselves. So what we're seeing is fundamentally, classic. So who remembers Internet of Everything? Quick show of hands. Okay. So far more people remember Internet of Everything than have CryptoKitties. That's interesting. So Internet of Everything. Fundamentally, what the Internet of Everything was all about is you take people, you take data, you take the things that people and data interact with, and you bind them with process, right? There's a recipe, there's a script that says these are the individuals, these are the networks, these are the ecosystems that interact with one another, these are the devices that are attached to those networks, people, and ecosystems, and this is the workflow, right? This is the data that is being pulled and pushed in that environment. It never really took off, right? And I think we can all debate the variety of reasons why it never really took off. But I would suggest that one of the reasons it never really took off is it didn't have the secret sauce that helped bind everything together, right? And I would propose that that secret sauce that's been missing has been blockchain technology, right? Now, we're probably a long way away from this happening in the near future, right? But if you think about data as now assets, right? Things of value, and people is now ecosystems, right? Ecosystems of networks, ecosystems of participants, peers, relationships. And you talk about things now, truly IoT things that are connected to blockchain environments. And you have smart contracts in place that actually govern and regulate the interaction between these environments, these individuals and devices. You've now got a model where leveraging blockchain technology and the security and the mutability that it affords you, you've now got a chance of actually creating this future. So one of the things that we've seen over the last couple of years through our journey in looking at how do we actually take blockchain technology and actually connect it with the real world is you have to have good devices. You have to have good endpoints that are designed securely, not only from a hardware perspective, so hardware root of trust, but also from a software perspective. Best practices in designing secure software. Best practices in managing the delivery of that software, the application of that software to the devices, the entire management of those assets. We're seeing a lot of interest in space, right? Location, right? Location of the asset, location of people, location of ecosystems. Geospatially indexing blockchain transactions is now becoming something that's very exciting, right? And we're starting to see some really good work out in the community to make that happen. Time. Every transaction is time-stamped, right? And so there's no surprise there. And identity. Identity is critical, not only for devices and people, but even for applications, right? Applications will probably have more an important role in identity than even devices in the future. We think that identity is such a critical component within this ecosystem that I'm also pleased to announce that we're actually now a sovereign identity steward, right? So we've joined the Sovereign Foundation as a founding steward of trust for decentralized identity. And the application of identity in devices, people, places, things, business applications, process, ecosystems, networks, I can't really express how important it is that we actually get identity correct, because it is the foundation of which everything that we're talking about will be based on moving forward. So, common primitives, right? So as we looked at devices, applications, resources, networks, what we found is that in the blockchain and IoT community, within that space, there's a variety of startups. A lot of really good work is happening. But fundamentally, what we find is that everyone is reproducing everyone else's work, right? You need a method to register an asset, right? Prove that it exists. You need a method to verify that that asset exists. You need a method to transfer that asset from one individual, one network, one owner to another. You need a method of getting updates from these assets, right? So now you're thinking about, this is a sensor that is connected to a fog or edge compute device that is aggregating data from an IoT deployment timestamping it, securing it, and posting it to a blockchain network, there needs to be a method and a mechanism for actually making that happen. And of course, we're all excited about the opportunities around wallets. So wallets in the blockchain and IoT space is very interesting, right? And so what we're seeing is these same 5 primitives being applied across a variety of industries, a variety of segments, but within the startup community, what we're finding is everyone is reproducing everyone else's work. So that led us to create an alliance that I'll talk about a little bit later on to see if we can actually come up with some common implementations and common standards to actually move this space forward. So in terms of use cases, right? These 5 primitives can be applied to almost any of the use cases that are listed on this slide here. Now, this is one of those classic slides where the moment you show it, it's obsolete, right? That's just the reality. There is so much innovation happening across all of these different areas and across the depths of these use cases that it's almost impossible to keep up now in terms of what are the good use cases that are starting to emerge. And of course, going from left to right, we're seeing financial use cases, interestingly also in the blockchain IoT space, right? And always moving all the way to the right in terms of physical assets, track and trace, supply chain. Autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles is one of the hottest use cases that is emerging, right? Digital wallets embedded within a electric or autonomous vehicle. That's not future, that's here today, right? You can actually do that today, right? The idea that an electric or autonomous vehicle paying for electricity, right, is an obvious use case. But also that same electric vehicle, an autonomous vehicle being paid for services, so picking up rides, delivering goods, that's a technology that is here today, right? This is not something that we need to invent. What we need to figure out is how do we onboard, how do we reduce the friction with policymakers and regulators and actually work with a broader ecosystem to actually make this more widespread, right? And of course, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in infrastructure as well at the same time. Industry colleagues chronicled have shown a really interesting use case, right? Pharma delivery via drone, right? Super exciting. You've combined one of the most hyped terminologies, blockchain, with another super hyped terminology in the drone ecosystem, and you've married them together and you've got this super hyping thing going on. But let's unpack this use case for a sec, right? What we have is a workflow that extends across multiple ecosystems, right? You have a workflow that is triggered by a refill order, right? That refill order, let's assume for the moment, is posted on a blockchain network. That can send triggers and events to a pharmacist. That pharmacist can say, well, I've just got this thing, this workflow event. I need to verify with the physician and potentially with the patient that this is actually a legitimate order, right? But if it's on blockchain, maybe that's just taken care of, right? The validation and verification that this is a genuine event is taken care of. You've now gonna have the pharmacist assign a drone to the task of delivering that drug to the patient. And while it's packaged on the drone takes off, it lifts off. Does the drone have to actually create a flight plan with the FAA or the local authorities? Does the drone have to follow a approved flight path between neighborhoods and across cities to deliver these drugs? The drone also has to be reporting real-time location, real-time telemetry. In the use case that Chronicle showed in the video that they have on YouTube, when the drone actually arrives at the patient's residence, the window interrogates the drone and says, should you be here? right? I mean, you have a window and a drone talking to each other. They're talking to each other over blockchain, right? And what the drone does, it says, this is the work order, this is the identity that I have on the blockchain network. You go off, Mr. Window, and verify for yourself whether or not I should be here, right? So there's this exchange, there's this dialogue between the drone and the window, and they're both talking to blockchain. And the window says, I see that there's a work order. This is a proved work order. This is a work order for a patient that I'm assigned to, and this is a work order that has been triggered, initiated, and validated by the physician, the pharmacist, and the network. I'm going to open the window, you're going to fly through, the patient's going to grab the drugs, and you're going to fly back to the pharmacy, right? But let's think about this for a sec. You've got potentially 5, maybe 6 completely orthogonal ecosystems at work here. Are they all going to be leveraging the exact same blockchain network, the exact same blockchain technology? Odds are probably not. You're probably never going to get a window manufacturer to use the same blockchain network as the FAA. You're probably never going to have a drone manufacturer using the exact same network as, say, the pharmacist network, right? So how do we make this reality, this use case a reality? How do we make it happen? This is an interesting slide. So when we look at technology, CISCO blockchain technology, and we look at the use cases that we're applying that technology to, supply chain is extremely important to us. Supply chain is actually a competitive advantage for us compared to other suppliers of our category. And so this is our dirt to bookings slide, right? The procurement of raw materials, the conversion of those raw materials to components, the assembly of those components into boards, those boards fully packaged into complete products, those products put on logistics partners, transportation networks, and delivered to customers, right? Keep in mind, CISCO is ranked number 3 in the world for supply chain efficiency in any category, right? So what does this mean? It means that we run a super hyper-efficient supply chain ecosystem. Over 80% of what we manufacture and what we sell is handled by somebody else. From the procurement of our raw materials, the conversion of those raw materials to sub-assemblies and components, packaging those components into finished products, and then delivering them to customers, we never touch it. We never touch any of that stuff, right? So we're super efficient. And Gartner has ranked us in the last 10 years in the top 10 in the world in this category. And as you can see, this is across a variety of categories, not just communications and electronics. And so we said, let's take a pragmatic view to this technology, this new fandangled thing called blockchain. Let's see if we can actually prove value within our own ecosystem, right? So remember, we're ranked number 3 in the world, right? Independently validated, verified, and attested by Gartner. And these are the friction points that we still have, right? We still have challenges around counterfeit and gray market. We still have challenges around high cost of capital, right? There is a business case that can be attached in each and every single one of these friction points. And what's interesting is there's a wide range of opportunities that we're seeing how we can apply the technology to actually create more efficiencies, create a reduction in risk, and at the same time, create entirely new markets and new monetization models. So part of our digital transformation strategy as we look at supply chain, how supply chain can actually leverage blockchain technology, is to think not 5 and 10 years into the future, but 12 and 18 months in the future and start putting some of these things into reality. We're also extremely happy to be partnering with HERE, right? So HERE is one of the most prolific location companies on the planet. They've got fantastic technology of providing not only indoor location, but marrying that to outdoor location as well. And so what we're doing together is we're working on actually creating a solution that goes after supply chain logistics and logistics transformation, leveraging blockchain technology. Actually combining and integrating all these different ecosystems from the creation and movement of goods from the point of source to the point of destination. So how do we make all this happen? How do we make all this ecosystem thing happen? How do we actually create an environment where we create interoperability, where you don't have to leverage a particular blockchain technology and then be stuck to it, right? How do you create flexibility and freedom of movement of business applications, assets across a variety of blockchain technologies? So this is where I want to introduce the Trusted Iot Alliance. This is an industry open source consortium that was created September of last year. These are our founding members. And one of the things that we really wanted to address is anytime any one of these guys and the extended membership that has grown to now almost 50 members goes into a customer environment, the very first question that they're often being asked is, which blockchain technology are you using? Why are you using this one and not that one, right? Rather, instead of focusing on the business value and the business outcomes, right, they're stuck in a debate of having to prove and defend the technology of choice, right? And so what we said is, let's get together, and if you recall, I talked about 5 common primitives earlier. Let's get together and let's define common practices. Let's define reference implementations of smart contracts that allow us to validate, create, verify, get updates, and create digital wallets in an IoT setting. So we're seeing interest from a variety of segments, right? Everything from capital markets all the way through to automotive, logistics, energy, oil and gas, manufacturing. The surprise for us was, the banks really want to get involved in this, right? Because what they're trying to figure out is how do they take advantage of the machine-to-machine economy that's coming, some would say is already here, right? But it's coming. And what is their role, right? If machines are executing payments between one another and they're conducting business autonomously, what is the role for the bank in that world? And so interestingly, financial institutions are very excited about machine-to-machine, and they're trying to figure out what their role is. So what we've actually done, we've actually created a reference architecture and a framework of, how do you actually do complete asset lifecycle management? What are the integration patterns? What are the protocols that need to be considered? And what's the reference architecture, right? Our job here is to not recreate something that already exists. Our job is to identify what are the tools that exist in the IoT space and what does it mean to blockchain enable them, right? So as an example, here's a workflow, a potential reference architecture that talks about how a blockchain network can talk to an IoT ecosystem and then talk to assets in the field. There are existing protocols, right? So TR69 is an example of remote management capabilities, right? What does it mean to blockchain enable TR69? What are the integration tools? What are the patterns that we need to be identifying, right? There's a variety of protocols that already exist that we can simply leverage and integrate in and actually create these environments where you can actually do asset interoperability in the blockchain IoT context. I talked about the integration patterns just briefly, right? There's a variety of modalities around how do you actually get edge devices talking to sensors and how they actually report data back and events back into the cloud or potentially even into a blockchain environment. And of course, the workflows, right? How do you provision assets in the field? How do you provision and maintain assets that in some cases will live 10, 15, 25 years in the field, right? And they'll be posting data for that entire duration into that blockchain network. What are those workflows that we know of today that we can adapt to this space. And again, just an example of, a model of events being generated, posted, and logged within the blockchain network. And then how do you get blockchain networks to actually communicate with one another? One of the ideas that we're proposing is, let's define an asset model. Let's define what it actually means to blockchain enable a thing that connects to the internet. Let's define reference implementations of smart contracts that will communicate and interact with those assets, so that from a business application layer, you don't have to worry so much about what's happening in the blockchain layer, because I can guarantee you over the next 3, 5, 10 years, blockchain will look completely different than the way it does today, right? But what will largely stay the same is what are those workflows? And also at the same time, we've also created an award program. So the Quantum Foundation folks have graciously given the Alliance $250,000 to help advance blockchain and IoT applications, tools, and technologies that leverages the quantum protocols. And at CISCO, we've actually granted $100,000 to actually advance the development of testnets and sandboxes designed specifically to test for interoperability between a variety of different blockchain technologies, applications, and resources. So the testnet is in development, right? We have nodes being deployed around the world. This is a sample of some of the members who are standing up nodes. In this testnet, we will operate a variety of different blockchain technologies. We'll run the hyperledgers of the world. We'll run the quorums, the quantums, the Cordas of the world. We'll actually have IOTA in there as well. So a variety of different blockchain technologies. Create an environment where folks can actually develop, and most importantly, when we get to this point, we can actually certify interoperability, right? So we're putting in the groundwork, we're putting in the foundation, and we're actually creating an environment where we can actually certify interoperable applications in a blockchain environment. And just to close, I think one of the things that's really important is the internet today is a collection of private networks that are connected to one another via common interfaces, common protocols, common standards, through which the operators of those networks have chosen to let data freely flow through. The internet's not free. Everybody pays for the internet. We see the evolution of blockchain technology very similar to the evolution of the internet. Collection of different networks, different pricing schemes, different monetization models, but at the end of the day, they all need to be interactive with one another. They need to be connected. And when they're connected, that's where we're going to see the real value of blockchain actually emerge. And as we see this, one of the challenges that I put to the community is, how do we create planet-scale systems of trust? Right? How do we actually get planet-scale trust? And how do we make that a reality, not in 10, 15 years, but how do we make that reality in the next 5? And with that, I'm out of time. Thank you.